Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another show. The movements are non-stop in the whole region of West Asia and North Africa, especially with more Qatari preparation now for the summits that are going to happen on Sunday and Monday that are going to discuss a unified response that's going to take place against Israel. In the meantime, we're having more and more leaks about the potential outcomes and certain moves and suggestions that are coming in the region to help support Qatar. One of them is Iranian missiles on Qatari soil on condition, and also a united Arab military, a proposal that came from Egypt previously, but Egypt is trying to reignite now joint defense forces that are going to take place and that will be activated whenever each of the countries participating in this defense pact get hit. Let's begin with this report here in the Israeli media that was also circulating in Iranian media as well. The Iranian press is on the offer to Qatar that threatens the change in the Middle East. We have figures from the Iranian establishment proposing to Qatar that they would have Iranian missiles, hypersonic missiles on Qatari soil, hypersonic ballistic missiles similar to the ones that Iran used against Israel, on the condition that some of these missiles are there on the condition that they remove American bases from the region. Now, that's where things get tricky. Of course, Qatar had a long relationship with the United States, and they're not immediately expected to all of a sudden change everything with the United States. But the fact that the Iranian side or elements from Iran, whether it's official or non-official, because at the end of the day, the man who proposed this is one of the senior lawmakers in Iran, close to the establishment. However, there would be other arrangements taking place from Iran too, because they had proposals for multiple Arab countries previously. Israel, however, is very worried from that prospect. Iran potentially supporting some of the Arab states with hypersonic ballistic missiles that the Israeli side doesn't have an answer to. That's going to be very problematic for Israel. And Iran didn't just stop there. And before I continue with what they just revealed, Iran, people need to really understand that Iran and Israel, both of their hands are on the trigger now. And it has been for a very long time. It's just a matter of time, or was a matter of time, up until they have another escalation, especially after the 12-day war. But now, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu's arrogance and strategic stupidity by attacking Qatar is now forcing other countries to follow suit and learn from Iran by starting to implement some of what Iran does to deter the child-killing state of Israel. They are in a really tough and tense situation. And despite the Israeli escalation, Iran is still preparing and is still very keen on sending warnings to Israel with the recent revelations that they had about missiles going from under the ground without being seen. Let's have a look at this video over here. So you see nothing on the ground, and all of a sudden you have a missile popping up from Iran. Iran is publishing this for the first time. And as a matter of fact, we saw that from the Palestinian resistance before, by the way. And Iran now is showing both Israel and the United States that not only are these missiles hidden in mountains and under the ground, we don't have launchers for them over the ground, so you don't see anything as in when we launch. All of this is deliberate, all of this is calculated. Iran and Israel are going to be seeing another war between them. These countries, it didn't end with the initial escalation and with the previous escalations between them. They're both preparing. Iran is very keen on showing them their capabilities with these missiles that they're launching now. And it's only a matter of time up until they have another war again. Israel is not really talking that much about Iran now, but we need to understand something. They put themselves in heaps of trouble with this recent attack that they had in Qatar. That wasn't only unsuccessful, that was a strategic disaster. By the way, more and more in Israeli circles and in Israeli media are talking about how much of a failure that attack was, because it hasn't achieved anything. It made things worse for Israel's image. It's forcing Arab countries to reconsider their security arrangements. It's forcing them to even go ahead and think about an actual response against Israel, things that Israel was protected from to a very large extent. By the way, they were even talking about expanding the falsely labeled Abraham Accords with other countries. What Accords are you going to have now by attacking these Arab states? Who's going to have peace with you? The first country that went to show solidarity with Qatar and condemned Israel and was humiliating their ambassador is the same UAE that had this treaty with them and the Abraham Accords. Israel is proving to all of the Arab states, by the way, that having a deal with us doesn't mean you have any sort of security. Having a deal with us doesn't mean that you're protected. As a matter of fact, it's like befriending a venomous, lethal snake. That's how it is. Just a matter of time up until that snake is going to bite you. That's in relation to Iran, and of course the escalations that are happening between Iran and the Israeli side, and also Israel and Qatar. And we're going to go back to Israel and Qatar and the calls coming from Egypt again, and the very significant move that was taken by the Egyptian authorities recently. But before that, Yemen Ansarullah, they said that they targeted occupied Jaffa with a hypersonic ballistic missile called Palestine 2 with a multi-warhead missile. They said they targeted a strategic location in Tel Aviv, but we heard from social media, multiple accounts verifying and confirming that they actually target the HQ of the Mossad in a nearby area. Usually, Ansarullah, when they target strategic or intelligence locations within Israel, within the genocide state, they don't really declare them, nor do they name them. But we do hear verifications coming from the ground. For example, in multiple cases, both when the Iraqi armed groups and Yemen used to conduct attacks against certain specific bases or secret bases, they didn't say what they're going to target, knowing very well where they're going to land. And now they're carrying out more and more operations against Israel with 37 strikes just in less than 2 weeks. Missiles, drones, UAVs, hypersonic missiles, you name it. It's not stopping from Ansarullah, and they're continuing this escalation against the genocide state, again with Israel having no answer whatsoever to stop these attacks coming from Ansarullah. Which leads us to the next point that I wanted to talk to you about. People are asking, how did Hamas say that they weren't really targeted? How did they say that they survived this attack from the Israeli side? They released more information now to clarify exactly what happened and why they survived this attack. We had multiple, rumors circulating. Well, Turkey told them, Egypt told them, Qatari intel told them last minute, although, the official narrative wasn't really that clear. And of course, with any of these attacks, a lot of things will remain hidden. But the Palestinian resistance came up with a statement, and they said that it was actually the security arrangements and procedures and how valid and correct they are that were taken by both Hamas and the Qatari security were the main reasons for the failure in the assassination attempt. We didn't receive any informational assistance, according to them, by any external party in relation to the attack. The enemy was unable to cause any human or technical breach in the Hamas and Qatari security protection team. And again, that this failed because Israel wasn't able to hack the system that both Hamas and the Qatari secret service or security services had in place to counter this attack coming from Israel. And again, in Israel, on its mainstream media, politicians, people are talking about how much of a huge failure this attack was. This was by an Israeli professor in the Israeli Channel 12 news website, saying the failure of the attack on Qatar is deeper than it seems. The daring assassination attempt Doha may turn out to be a strategic mistake whose cost is higher than its benefits. Even if operation did not completely fail operationally, it caused enormous political damage. It damaged trust with Qatar and the Arab world, complicated relations with the US, strengthened our enemies, and did not advance the release of the hostages. In the end, Israel remained more isolated. These statements are not just coming from this man, they're circulating and being plastered all across Israeli media, Israeli social media. It's coming from Israeli politicians. It's coming from also Israeli senior figures in the military and in the intelligence establishment inside of the genocide state. Now, moving on to the last couple of bits that I wanted to talk to you about. Of course, Qatar is due to have a summit, a very urgent summit that is going to be very quick, actually, this time. Usually, some of the Arab states, when they want to have a summit, it'll take them like a month or two or half a year, and it'll end up with them, having dinner. But now it's looking serious. They're going to have a summit, Arab and Muslim countries, on Sunday and Monday, talking about a unified response to deter the Israeli aggression against Qatar. More and more countries are talking about Qatar's security being our security. We have everything we own at their disposal. We'll support them with whatever they need. And the most serious of those statements and reports that came is Egypt now calling to have a joint Arab force to challenge the Israeli occupation and target Israel whenever there is an attack against one of the Arab countries. Egypt had these proposals previously, but now it's becoming more and more official because they're trying to use the momentum that's coming from Qatar. And that's what the Arab states need to do. As a matter of fact, if the Arab states don't do that now, then they are writing their destiny, because Benjamin Netanyahu is on a genocidal expansionist mission. And if they do not stand up, he will come after them. It is very, very clear. The Egyptians are already in peak readiness. And I'm going to tell you about another move that they've done, which is very severe now in Sinai, where tensions between them and Israel are already rising, have been rising for so long, and their relations with Israel is already deteriorating in. But this call is coming from Egypt to have these countries Turkey is preparing itself because they have a lot of Hamas figures going back and forth. Israel blames them of having operations being managed from Turkey against Israel, especially in the West Bank. From an Egyptian perspective, they know that they will be continuing housing and visiting and seeing Hamas officials again to try and reach solutions. And Benjamin Netanyahu, if he was strategically stupid enough to do what he has done so far, then he would be strategically stupid enough to go and attack the biggest Arab army and the biggest army in the region, which is Turkey, the Turkish army. Turkey has been preparing ballistic missiles, and they've taken significant military moves after the 12-day war between Iran and Israel. Ballistic missiles, underground bunkers already being built and finished within a couple of months. They are at peak readiness with their air defense systems, publishing new air defense systems. They're having a strategic internal communication system specific to the Turkish army without any sort of communication or connection to the NATO nor to any other country. All of these moves are very, very significant, and there is serious preparation. However, what else happened between Egypt and Israel? Of course, the main problem and the main location that caused the problems between Israel and Egypt is Sinai. Of course, Egypt controlled Sinai, the majority of its history. There were, of course, different empires in the past, but Egypt had Sinai. Sinai belonged to Egypt, you know. Of course, it was the Levant before that and what have you in different empires, but technically it belonged to Egypt. Then, of course, Israel came. Israel started to say, no, Sinai is ours. Why is Sinai ours? Well, they call themselves the Jewish state, don't they? And Moses, Sinai, 10 Commandments, you know, all of that stuff. But when, and Israel at the time used to say that Sinai, it's as important as Tel Aviv. When Egypt forced them out of Sinai, which later led to the peace treaty that they had, and having Sinai primarily as a demilitarized zone, Israel stopped talking about the holiness of Sinai. One of the most sacred places in Judaism stopped being holy because they were forced out by the Egyptian army. Imagine that. But that's Zionism for you. Cherry picking. Anyway, tense area in the past 5 to 6 years, well, in the past decade, to be more precise, a bit more, Egypt has been intensifying forces, but in the past 2 years, it's gone off the road. They've quadrupled the number of forces in Sinai, built more tunnel underground systems in Sinai, more communication, more ground troops, more tanks, more everything. Everything is more intense in Sinai. But they didn't completely cut the security ties and security coordination that they have with Israel in Sinai, because it's brokered by the Americans, and, you know, it's a serious deal. And even if the leaders weren't talking, there was coordination in relation to Sinai. But now Egypt told them, well, that's it. We're no longer going to be coordinating with you in Sinai. They're holding back, right? Pushing back, scaling back the security coordination. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Really, they are doing whatever they want in Sinai. Of course, Egypt is still in very good relations with militarily with the American side. Politically, not that great. The president refused to meet the American president when he was invited. They didn't have any sort of phone calls or communication. Security-wise, there's still some sort of coordination. Israel, they're telling them, we don't want to deal with you in Sinai, especially after the attack that happened in Qatar. What could that really mean here? Well, Israel asked Egypt previously for clarifications. In the past 2 years, Egypt, boosting more forces, everything, because they know what Israel is capable of. So Israel sent them questions. Oh, can you clarify, why are you adding more forces to Zion? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And the response would come from the Egyptian army directly. It's our territory and we do whatever we want in our territory. Now, mind you, doing whatever we want in our territory under the Camp David Accords that speak about, Sinai, that doesn't really exist. It should be demilitarized. There should be no armed forces that are capable of conducting war, just policing forces, things deal with smuggling and what have you. Now, that's not the case. We have two armies facing each other now. And now, the Egyptian side will not even be telling them anything. They're going to be telling, you want to know something? Well, you go and try and look for yourself. I'm not here. I'm not going to tell you anything. We have our country. We're going to prepare. And that is also what? Also an indication that this move from Egypt and call to activate a united Arab military with a mutual defense pact could have something to do with reducing the Israeli cooperation in Sinai. Why? Because, well, if they're going to have some sort of a cooperation with other Arab states, so military cooperation, they're going to have to reduce sharing any sort of information with the main enemy, with the arch enemy in the region. They're going to have to halt all of that security cooperation so that they can potentially activate anything to do with this united Arab military that they're speaking about. And in Israel, by the way, they hear the news as and when they're coming out. So, for example, the opposition leader, Yair Lapid, he already said the Egypt's proposal to form a joint Arab force is a severe blow to the normalization process, to the normalization agreements, excuse me. And also, of course, but the process is to try and have more deals with other Arab countries. Why? Because, well, if according to the peace treaty that they have with Israel, Sinai should be demilitarized. In effect, what Egypt is suggesting now is to further intensify military presence inside of Sinai. And there is a very good reason why it was Egypt pushing for having a joint military force, because Egypt would be using a lot of that force under the pretext of being the first front in that alliance, alongside, of course, Jordan, that has the longest borders with Israel. But Egypt would also say, well, look, I have the second largest borders with occupied Palestine. Sinai is way more tense, and I would need to have forces here. And listen, the moment you tell anyone the door is open to go and fight Israel, you'll have millions of people, not just from the Arab states, globally. Now the Israeli side is thinking, hold on a second, something is brewing. It doesn't have to be a normal army, by the way. It could be paramilitary, it could be anything. What can Israel do? If the Arab states around Israel will just stop securing the borders, that's it. Allow the borders to be breached. What's going to happen? And the same thing is happening with Jordan too. And the words that are being used, by the way, against Israel, pariah state, for example, the Qataris are using passing state, pariah state, terror entity. They're no longer calling them like Israel, especially with Jordan. The Jordanian foreign minister in his United Nations Security Council used language never used before by a Jordanian official against Israel. And in Jordan, Israel just introduced a new military force that will consist of 14,000 Israeli reservists serving in those areas all across the borders with Jordan. Why? Why? If the borders are secure, if you trust that other party, if you have a peace treaty with them, why are you doing that? It's because they know that things are brewing. there is an option that Jordan would have any sort of agreement. Listen, Ansarullah in Yemen told them no long ago, just open the borders, we'll send 100,000 people. So even if they don't want to do anything, they'll tell them, okay, do you know what, come. What is Israel going to do? That's going to be very problematic for them. And all of these options are on the table. And by the way, if the Arab states are going to be having these meetings, by the way, don't think that all of these options would be out of the question. Okay, there are people who are blatantly hostile to Israel. The resistance movements or the resistance front countries and movements inside them. All it takes for these countries is to open the door and participate and make life easier. It's not going to take a lot, by the way. It's not going to take much whatsoever. You're going to destroy Israel within no time. You'll put them in a war of attrition that they cannot handle. Couple of techniques here and there, arrange stuff. They can come up with something easily done. Israel is thinking about all of these scenarios, and now they're realizing the mess that Benjamin Netanyahu has put them in. Firstly, no one is talking about the prisoners of war. There's no talk about negotiations. There is no negotiating. The Israeli side has none other than the United States administration. Let's put it that way. The only country supporting with weight the Zionist Israeli war criminal regime is the United States administration. Europe, most of Europe, they now supported already a Palestinian state, the recognition of a Palestinian state. Again, symbolic, not symbolic. Do they want to do this? Is it just an act? Whatever you want to call it. Israel is really pissed off by this move. The American administration is really angered by this move. Marco Rubio is telling European countries, I told you the Israelis might respond to these attacks. And you may ask, what is Israel going to respond? Well, terror. What they've been doing for the majority of their life. Terrorism, escalating tensions, having certain groups under any sort of bogus, false pretext to conduct actions in Europe. They just targeted Europe several months back by having an attack against an aid ship, a civilian aid ship off the shores of Malta. Did you hear that on your mainstream media news outlet? No, you didn't. Why? Because they're slaves. They're puppets. They're propaganda. That's why. But Israel is capable of doing that. And Marco Rubio is threatening on behalf of Israel. Imagine that. Marco Rubio sitting there threatening European countries. Oh no, if you do anything, Israel is going to be responding to you. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you in this live stream. Thank you everyone for joining the chat. Thank you for everyone for participating also in the chat. Thank you. Special thanks to anyone who sent super thanks. Golden Sun, Michael McIntyre F, Physique, and Michael again. Appreciate your support. And of course, everyone for your contribution. In the meantime, everyone, I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, day or night, depending on where you are. Stay blessed, take care, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.